Welcome to our series where we discuss the latest real estate trends with Canada's most prominent business leaders, asking better questions to help build a better working world. This is Reimagining Real Estate. I'm William Yeager, a partner at EY Canada. In my role, I explore the newest real estate trends influencing the country's largest industry and ask the better questions that keep us ahead of the curve. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jon Love, CEO of KingSett Capital, one of Canada's leading private equity real estate companies. Jon, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Will, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to join you.
A little bit about Jon before we start the conversation. Jon was formerly president and CEO of Oxford Properties Group and serves on the board of directors of the Chief Executives Organization. He's a member of the Business Council of Canada and YPO, and was appointed a member of the Order of Canada in 2018. Jon, share your thoughts with us on the future of the office. There's so many diverging opinions these days, and probably if we polled 10 different real estate executives, we'd get 10 different answers. Where do you sit on the continuum? Very curious to hear your thoughts on this topic.
So, Will, the role of the office and the speculation about that evolution is a really interesting question. People need to be with other people. There's a reason that over the millennia, that commerce has always been done in aggregation. And it's because 70% of communication is nonverbal. And people getting together is key to connection, collision, creativity, productivity. And I think that we increasingly miss those connections, having our teams together. And while we're all used to Zooms and Teams and whatever, there's nothing like being in the room, walking down the hall, mentoring a young colleague and saying, on the way out of the meeting and saying, you made a good point about this, maybe next time you could do this just a little bit better. And it's those little touch points that make it the real difference in everybody's career. I think as we go forward, we will see work from home play a role. It'll help with flex work and some other things. But at the end of the day, real commerce is going to be done in person.
Shifting gears a little bit, what are you doing at KingSett around ESG and sustainable investments, and how important is it to your stakeholders?
So, ESG, I think, is foundational in the future of every business. And I would say that, whether it be at Oxford or at KingSett, we have exercised elements of building an environmental, social, and governance structure, over a long period of time. Over the last 5 years, we've accelerated these initiatives because I think increasingly you've got to get real estate assets to carbon zero. We've done it with Scotia Plaza. It's actually quite a feat. This doesn't happen overnight. Complicated engineering, strategic investment, stakeholder engagement. There's a whole bunch of pieces to the puzzle. At KingSett, we've got 3 FTEs working just on the environmental side for our portfolio. And I think that'll be a baseline going forward. I think there'll be a time when a tenant will say, how much carbon am I assuming by leasing space in your building? And while obviously rent and other things are important, the carbon footprint will also be a key factor. And this is not something you can change on a dime. It's a long-term process. And we're heavily invested and heavily committed to making progress. And our aspiration would be to be best in class in ESG. And I would tell you that others in the industry are also, the senior leaders in the industry are also doing a great job. And I think the impact of Canada's commercial real estate industry amongst the biggest, most progressive companies is a story that needs to be told, because it's quite impressive, the energy and people and capital and progress that's being made at the high end, including ourselves.
I fully agree, Jon. Where should companies start in their ESG journey if they were just getting started right now? What do you recommend?
So, starting an ESG strategy, first of all, just give some consideration to what it is you're trying to accomplish. And you have to socialize it internally, because, if you don't have your team and your coworkers, what I call the inmates on board, you're not going to get anywhere. And I should also say that, reaching out to professionals to give you some guidance, such as one of Canada's leading consultancies, EY, is a constructive first step, because, they've got lots of resources, horsepower, and advice that I think can be helpful.
Thanks for that, Jon, and really interesting point. How do you plan on being opportunistic in the next 3 to 5 years, and how are you going to go about prioritizing capital?
Our strategy going forward is the same as it's been over the last now almost 20 years, which is we continue to leverage, our people, our platform, our resources to do the best we can to think out of the box, to see other opportunities and take advantage of situations as they might present themselves.
From a distress perspective, we're not seeing the action that I think a lot of us perhaps anticipated at the beginning of COVID. What can we expect from a distress perspective, and what are your thoughts?
I think in Canada, those looking to take advantage of distress situations will be very disappointed. And I say that because I don't think we'll see much. And that's for a number of reasons. One is that assets are held in such strong hands that owners aren't distressed. So nobody's looking for a bargain sale. There's solid support from, our lenders, the lending community, whether it's be the bank, life goes, and so on. And I think on the customer side, I think there's good take up. Will there be some niche opportunities? There might be. Obviously, hospitality and retail is what people have their eye on. But I wouldn't look. We're not going to see any broad-based distress. I think we'll see actually quite the opposite, because once the lockdown's over, and so we don't have to do things on Teams and Zooms and so on, we'll actually be in a room, and we'll actually go out, and we'll actually want to connect with our friends and our family. And I think you'll actually see what I call I think you'll see a V recovery. And I think you'll see it fairly sharply.
Jon, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time. And I thought this was incredible, really engaging, and really interesting perspectives. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, Will, thank you very much. And I think I applaud EY's initiative here, because I think it's important that, especially in this time of isolation where people are forced to work at home and remotely and lockdowns and so on, that there's a greater and greater narrative and dialogue amongst business leaders and others through the industry, so people can connect. They can see what other people are thinking. Because I'll leave you with a parting thought. The future will look much brighter than I think some people fear. We will be back together. We will be working together. And I think as businesses and as Canadians, I'd hope that we can learn from the experience of the last year and move forward in a very constructive way for all Canadians in all parts of the country. Thank you for having me.